She and Mary used to attend the same church, so they're catching up. Thank you to everyone for coming to this session. I think we all have a lot of questions, and I'm hoping that Arienne can answer them. We set up a microphone in the back so that you can ask questions, and everybody hopefully can hear you. But I'm pleased to introduce again Canon Arienne Davidson from the diocese. And she has really explained to the vestry what going the route of a priest in charge means and what it could mean for St. Luke's. And I hope she can explain it to all of you so you can understand why the vestry made this decision and what our next steps are. We also have our consultant with us, and she is going to kind of take notes on the questions and what people say so that she can work with the profile committee and help them design a program of doing some really deep dive into what is our culture. Do we want our culture to continue the way it is? Do we want to change it? Where do we want to go from here? Who do we envision leading us? Where do we see ourselves in 5 years? How do we grow? How do we get more children? All those wonderful questions. So that part doesn't stop just because we made this decision. And I just want to reassure everybody that we are committed to this process and we really want to do it right. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Arienne.
Thank you. And good morning. And I was just want to say thank you for coming to church and praying today. When we're in transition, sometimes we forget that one of the most important things we can do is pray. Give thanks to God for all of the goodness in our lives and that God has drawn us together. And the goal of what we do in transition is to keep us together while we're moving in the direction God is calling us. That is always our goal in any of these endeavors. Sort of like a few weeks ago, there was that passage about Jesus on the water. And everybody, he fell asleep, right? And everyone was about to drown. And they freaked out. The thing is, to get to the other side, to do the work Jesus has given us to do, we have to stay in the boat together, even when it's kind of scary. And so if today is one of those times where because of the transition and the way things have gone, it feels a little uncertain or maybe our direction's unclear, we can have faith that if we are in the boat together, heading in the same direction, we will get there. God always does that for us when we endeavor to stay together and be faithful. So right now, you are in transition. And that means specifically for the St. Luke San Lucas, you had a rector who was your permanent settled priest, and he has retired from that role and graciously decided to stay as your interim. Now that's unusual, so already we're doing something a little different than the way we would normally do it if we had a rector depart and then there would be somebody totally different who would be the interim, so that you would kind of like, I don't know, it's a palate cleanser, a bit like a sorbet or something like that, right? You want to have a sense of like, things are going to be different in the next course, in the next chapter. So that's what we would usually do, but already notice for important pastoral and developmental reasons, we didn't do that. We kept somebody in place to keep things stable so that you could continue doing the good work of parish health, growth, and feeding the poor that you have been doing, right? We're going to keep doing that. So what I recommended when I talked to the vestry was that St. Luke San Lucas consider a priest in charge call instead of the traditional interim to rector call. And there were a couple of reasons for that. One of them is that we have an interim in place who is somewhat time limited. That is to say, as Kathy referred to, we're trying to honor Jesus' timeline to be fully retired. And we're also aware that in this time of interim, we're not at full-time effort, right? That can save us money if we're worried about that, but it also means we don't have the developmental energy that we might want in a full-time person who can be here for more things for us as we grow as a community, right? So one goal was to get someone full-time faster. So that was one of the reasons. Another reason that we considered a priest in charge rather than a traditional interim to rector path for you as a parish is that you have a unique developmental developmental model of ministry. You're in a unique place through development, and you have a unique model of ministry. That's what I want to say. You have two yoked congregations led by the same vestry, which is why I'm here now, and I'll be here after the 1 o'clock to give a similar talk, right? So because of that, we're not looking, the number of priests who can do that well, who can shift between effectively pastoring a white Anglo congregation and a Latino Spanish-speaking congregation are not that many. So we'll sit with that for a second. If you don't believe me, we can talk about it. But I'll say it just as like, and it's a feature of our church. Like it's something we're working on doing differently. We're raising up more Spanish-speaking priests. We're raising up, for instance, more priests who might look like me. But just to give you a sense of what this is like in the wider church, right? I'm an Asian American woman. I'm middle-aged, I would say. I got together with the other Asian female priests, deacons, and bishops that CPG found that have more than 10 years of service left. So that means I have to be working age, right? Not retired. There were less than 30 that they told us in the whole church who are like me, right? In the Episcopal church. So if you're thinking that there's like thousands of priests, and when we're looking for a priest here, we're gonna get, 20 names, and we're gonna whittle it down to the right ones, that's not how it is anymore. And it also doubly isn't how it is when we're looking for specialized skills. In this case, the ability to bilingually and biculturally pastor St. Luke's San Lucas. And if we're honest, after COVID and after things that have been hard for us as a congregation, we also need some redevelopment. We need to be thinking about what our purpose is, how we can do it better, how we can love each other more, how we can accomplish God's will more efficiently and more to God's purpose, right? So that's the place that we are. We want to be more healthy, more faithful. And that's going to require some intentional effort. So when we're looking for someone to do development work, when we're looking for someone who is bicultural, when we have all these special things, it's actually often easier to ask someone like me to find a person who has more of that stuff, or a handful of people that have that stuff and give you those names. Because if we did it the other way, it's probably going to take like 2 years. And we're still going to be struggling to find that person who is not very common in the applicant pool. So Priest in Charge gives us this opportunity to move a little bit faster. But there's a trade-off, right? When we do a regular process, there's this period where we really sort of ask ourselves, who are we? What is God calling us to do? How do we work together as a community? And we create a document, a living document, a profile, to share with clergy to invite them to come be a part of our community and the work we're trying to do, right? So that process typically takes 6 to 9 months for profile development once you start it. So our profile committee would be starting right now if we were on the regular process. So 6 to 9 months from now, you would get a document, and then at the minimum. And then we would say who wants to apply to this job, and then we would take a few months to vet them. And then your search committee would take a few months to talk to them, and it takes a while. So what we do instead in a priest in charge model, as Kathy said, is sort of a lease to own model. We flip the work of discernment around. So instead of having a really great RFP for our priest, instead of having a really great list of here's all the things we want and here's who we are, we're actually going to hold it a little more lightly. will say, we've actually done a lot of discernment because we've had a lot of transitions faster than we wanted in the past few years. So we actually have some profile stuff we've already been working on, right? That's one thing we know. We also know that through the work you've been doing with Jesus and Parish Health, you have set goals and accomplished them. That's actually the same kind of thing you would do if you were trying to figure out what God's calling you to do, and then ask someone to do it with you. So what we're going to do, if we go with this priest in charge model, which the vestry's decided to do, is I'll be giving 1 or 2 names in the next couple weeks to your vestry. They are going to figure out, based on kind of core profile information from the past, where we are now in terms of parish health and the goals. That's going to be their governing principle for how they run this interview. So they'll review materials, do an interview, as many as they need to with the person. And if they call that person as priest in charge, they would start when they could start. And instead of doing the big meetings before they start, where we talk about our feelings and what we're upset about and what we want, we're actually going to greet somebody and invite them to come pray with us and get to know us. And then after 3 to 6 months, we'll say, now that we spent some time together, what are the most important things we need to do in the next year? And you'll pick 1 to 3 of those things. Those are called mutual ministry goals. After you've worked on those mutual ministry goals together for about a year, so about 18 months into the call, the agreement asks for you to do discernment. And at that point, the vestry will take all of the work you've done, all of the meetings, the feedback you gathered along the way, and they're going to say, based on the work we've done together, how well have we worked together? Do we trust each other? Are we able to accomplish the goals we set together? Do we want to call this person to keep being our priest and do this work with us? And if the answer is yes, the vestry votes to make that person your rector at the 2-year mark. No, not much later than that. We're pretty gracious about the timing. The important thing for you to know is you can't have a priest in charge forever. And we're going to make sure that doesn't go on forever unanswered. Like, there's not going to be a 10-year engagement here, right? The ring's going to go on it at the 2-year mark, or not, and that's okay too. Right? So that's, I think, what Kathy was referring to as more of a we can walk away. Like, this is structured so that you have time to grow together, learn together who you are, what you want to do it, and then think about whether you want to keep doing it or not. So notice that while in a profile system, you're doing a lot of meetings on the front end and guessing what you want and what it will be like with this new person. Instead, you're going to actually do it. So in some ways, like that front ends some of the anxiety. We aren't going to know as much as we would if we spent 2 years planning. But on the other hand, we'll have this great opportunity to act together, to reflect together, to feel together, to deepen our trust together, so that the work we do can be fruitful, hopefully. So either way, you'll note, like whether you sign a contract with someone for 2 years and then call them at the end, or you do this long profile process and search where you're not sure if we can have an interim in place, either at full time or at all for part of that period, right? And then 2 years, you would get somebody. So that's sort of what I imagine the difference would be. I think another thing, this is harder to admit, you are an historic congregation. So many of you have been through many call processes. And one thing that really is different right now is the number of applicants. This was true, this was starting before COVID, but it has accelerated in COVID. So we were always older in the clergy cohort than the average age, pretty much since the 80s. We have the priest cohort doesn't match the demographic age of the populace, right? And what that means is about, I think it's like 700 people retire and 500 are ordained every year, deacon and priest. And so the number of people applying to positions has gone way down. 30 years ago, if we put a church like this up, we would get 15 names, easy, qualified, right? Now we will probably get 5. Some of them might be graduating seminary. Like I actually get applications for big corporate congregations from people who are in local formation or who are not ordained yet. And that gets me up to 5 or 7. So what we want in our office is for you to have a leader who is able to work with you, who you can build trust with, who can help you grow in the ways you want to grow. That's the goal. So that was a lot. We can even take a deep breath. And if anyone has any questions or comments, please feel free to come to the microphone. If you could either stand there, we'll bring it to you. It's just going to be important for everyone to be able to hear. Wow, okay, yeah.
Can you tell us about your organization?
The organization, so it's actually your organization. I am part of the Diocese of Olympia, and all of us are. So the diocese, in the Episcopal Church, we are actually pretty territorial because of our Anglican roots. In the Anglican system, a parish is actually a geographical unit. It's a town. And this is true in like Louisiana, they call counties parishes. It's because it's a geographical unit, and if you were the church in charge of the parish, actually taxes are paid to run the church. In England, this is true. You bury everyone in your city if they come to you. You marry everyone in your city if they come to you and you're a parish. So the way the Episcopal Church is organized, there's this wider church, which is called the province of the Episcopal Church, and then there are dioceses. There are dioceses that are in the United States. There are dioceses like Taiwan. There are dioceses like Guam or Haiti that are part of the Episcopal Church. And our diocese is the Diocese of Olympia, where all of Western Washington, from Oregon to Canada, from the ocean to the mountains. Our farthest east church is St. Clair Snoqualmie on the pass. And so, there's a chapel. St. Bernard's Chapel is actually the farthest east. I'm told that if you walk, there's no bathroom inside, and I'm told if you walk outside to relieve yourself, you might be in Spokane, the diocese. I was told that. So all Episcopalians in Western Washington are part of the Diocese of Olympia, and I work for the office of the bishop. So everyone in Western Washington has one bishop. Right now, that's Bishop Provisional Melissa Skelton. And I work directly with her as the canon to the ordinary, and ordinary means bishop. So if you're the canon to the ordinary, it means you're the person, canon, in charge of bishop things, ordinary, which really means whatever the bishop tells you to do. You do if you're the canon to the ordinary. So in this case, it means specifically working with priests and vestries in transition. And Dr. Wyatt is actually an important colleague in this work because, while it looks like I'm the transition minister on fancy forms, what that means is I go to conferences and talk to priests and try and do matchmaking and vetting with those clergy. Dr. Wyatt is the one who actually helps you find them, helps you figure out what you need to ask for, who helps you ask the right questions in the interview process. So, big picture here. I work for the office of the bishop in the Diocese of Olympia, and we are all part of the Diocese of Olympia. Right? And that's the organization. Does that make any other? Did I miss anything? Did I get it all?
Okay, we're hearing you well live too.
Oh, good.
I was working with Mike downstairs.
Oh, yeah, good.
There are 5 people watching us.
Excellent. Thank you, people who are watching. I'm really glad that you're listening and a part of this too. Oh, I think we got one over here.
Could they go to the microphone? Thank you. Thank you, Rick.
I've got it plugged in here, so I can't really hear very well. So, Arienne, I may be jumping ahead a
Yeah.
little bit, but I'm wondering if you could talk about what the role of our pro-thought committee is now, because I think there's some confusion there.
Yeah, so when we were planning on doing a regular process, the profile team would have done the work that's described in our documents, right? I think for now, what we're gonna do is Maribel May's gonna work with you to kind of shift what the product is we're going for, but not the actual work. So the first thing I think that we're gonna commend to you is there's a portfolio system called the Office of Transition Ministry. Every priest fills out this portfolio with like narrative questions and stats on them, but parishes do it too, and the reason why is so we can compare apples to apples. So priests will be answering questions like, how do you manage conflict? And congregational leaders who are filling out this form will answer questions like, give us an example of a conflict in your parish and how it went, right? So one of the things the parish profile team will be asked to do is work on that Office of Transition Ministry portfolio to gather those data, and we can do that right away. We can start working on that. The other thing you'll do is once we get the priest in place, this is when instead of doing like a profile with a magazine document at the end, we're gonna do something different, and we'll be doing self-study work, and you will still be facilitating and gathering that information, but you'll be doing it also with the priest there. And the information we're gonna be focusing on is not hypothetical ministry, but the actual ministry we're doing. So my hope is actually you still get to have lots of meetings, and maybe there's some surveys and you have to call people and you're gonna be really busy. But also, you know, the kind of output we get is just gonna be a little different because it's our stuff, it's not imaginary stuff. Instead of doing matchmaking, we're doing family counseling. But not in the, we did something wrong family counseling, the good kind, where we're just trying to be awesome together, get to know each other better, work better together. Yeah. What else? These are great questions, because this is a little different than what we're used to.
So how often does priest in charge route occur for parishes in this diocese?
It's been more since I've been here. Well, I'm not sure actually if it's been more priest in charge since I've been here. So the question, the question was, how often does a priest in charge model happen for parishes in the Diocese of Olympia? So it's actually been going on for quite a while. When I came in, there was a priest in charge who'd been in place for 7 years. And actually, there was a conflict. And I had to intervene in the conflict, and that's when I said, if we do this, it needs to be a 2-year term, or max 3 years, with clear benchmarks for when you do stuff. Because otherwise we get this fuzzy role, and it lasts forever, and then when stuff isn't going as well as we hope, the fuzziness comes to bite us in the hiney. So we don't want that. But just as an example, there are probably, so 2 or 3 really positive examples of this model that I can think of in the last 3 years would be Trinity Seattle. They were in the middle of a multi-million-dollar building project that's been put on hold several times because they had cash like in play with developers. Again, lots of money. It did not make sense to them to do a 2-year vacancy while they were doing capital work, and then do the search and onboard someone again, if they could avoid it. So we did a priest in charge with them, and they called their rector, Beth Fitzgibbons, and so she's in place. We also did this at St. John the Baptist in Seattle, which was actually, it was a church that had been redeveloped by someone who was there for 3 years, but that person left suddenly. And they actually felt a little bit like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with us? Can we even do this now? Somebody we thought was going to be with us isn't with us. And so I was talking to a candidate that was really awesome. And we postulated perhaps this would be a thing. So she was one of the first ones I did this full process with this way. She is well in place. They are cooking. And she's well integrated into the Diocese of Olympia. She came from outside. She was actually a canon to the ordinary in another diocese who took a call as a parish priest. So she's the priest in charge. We had a priest who'd been had struggles in a previous call. And the parish had been trying to get from maybe 3/4 time up to full time to call a new priest. This priest, it felt like a really good match. So we worked with them, gave them this name as priest in charge. They worked with this priest in charge, and they called him. And they also are reporting to us like they're doing well. They were able to increase their budget to provide more funding, and they're doing more developmental work than they had in a little bit. So those are the sorts of, so you can hear how for some of these places, it's like there's a history of maybe some bumps in the road, a need for some redevelopment or some special attention, right? That's one of the factors that you'll often hear in the priest in charge calls. So it's not just about expediency. If it really isn't. We do this because we think it's going to help you developmentally, and if I think we aren't going to easily find people on the open market. That isn't to say that when a position's open, I don't talk to people about it. But if I have to give you a name by a certain day, I'm really going to do my best to give you a name by a certain day. And that's different than when we say, all right, we've done all this work, now let's sit around for 2 months and see who says I want to do it. That's just a different process.
Arienne,
Yes.
could you,
I'll repeat it too.
That'd be good.
Could you be clear about the fact that this is a totally different contract and it's very structured, and that we, as a body, can opt out at any time?
Yes.
No fault, or that person can opt out. So could you kind of go into that a little more?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when we put these together, we want them to work, and usually they do. So we should hold it just like that, something we're really hoping will work, and we're going to try really hard to make work. That being said, it's meant to be 2 years with discernment at the end. And like any discernment, we make our yes a yes and our no a no. So the contract is written in such a way that you really should submit mutual ministry goals to our office at the 6-month mark. So 6 months in, you're telling us this is what we're doing. And then 12 months later, you and the priest are going to come to our office and say, we were ready to start the actual discernment process, and then it moves from the self-study profile work into the equivalent of the search team. So at that point, though, the search team is the vestry. And they're taking all the information that we've gathered together as a team over the last 1.5 years of knowing each other, working together. They're going to have listened to you and all of the data that the profile team had gathered. And they're going to do discernment work with that priest. And we will provide a consultant to help facilitate it, if that is what you would like. Some places want to do it in-house, but with support, with us checking in on the process, which is okay. But if you would like, we are happy to bring facilitated help for that. Probably her. I'm volunteering her.
Does the new bishop understand this process, and does he support it?
So what I'll say is, this new bishop so far has wanted to learn what we're doing. I think it would be foolish for any bishop if we had something in process and they were coming in to shut it down. So that's really, really unlikely. I can't, as a person who works for a bishop, I cannot read bishops' minds, nor can I predict the future. I wish I could. I would make so much more money if I could. But because I can't, what I'll say is, it is so unlikely, but possible, like a lot of things. It's super unlikely. The bishop knows we engage in priest in charge calls. That is not, and honestly, there are dioceses near where he's from where the only calls they issue now are priest in charge calls. Like, they don't let anyone be the rector to start out anymore. Like, I think Connecticut does that now. So it's not so, even though this is newer to us, or it's newer to this parish, it's not really that new of a model. I would say the thing that I've been very careful about is making sure there's those guardrails in the agreement that Kathy was talking about. Because not having the guardrails is usually how I've seen priest in charge go wrong. If we all come in knowing our jobs in it, it's fine. And it's really, again, not terribly different in outcome if you do it right than the other method. It just changes the order of the work. So I don't think the bishop would object. I haven't talked to him directly about this. I think the chances that the bishop would shut this down are like in the 3% area, like the farthest variance off the mean, the lowest chance, but possible. Do you have any sense of difference on that, Maribel Nave? Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, you're in transition, so there's things you don't know. I genuinely am coming to you doing the best I can, and I have not been told by the bishop, new bishop-elect, who has the consents to stop doing this. So, I mean, that's the place, like, this is gonna be fine. And also, bishops are bishops, and I'm not one. Is that about, other priest, is that about as good as I can, as clear as I can be? I don't know. Okay. Yeah. Oh, one in back, here, we got one more. Oh, I hear it.
Check.
There we
go. First of all, thank you for being here today. This answered a lot of the questions that I had already, and I kind of have a weird two-part question here. First part of the question is, are there safeguards in place to ensure that parishes remain Episcopal churches with various things that have happened at various former parishes over the last years and decades and everything? And second part of my question, it may or may not seem like it's applicable. However, is the Episcopal Church doing anything, and I'm going to use a word that's not a bad word, it just means people's minds work a little bit differently. Is the Episcopal Church in general doing anything in particular to reach out to the autism community?
Okay.
Thank you.
So the first one is, I would say the first one again. Quick. Sorry.
First part of the question is are there safeguards in place to make sure that parishes remain Episcopal churches? I'm specifically thinking of what happened to St. Matthew's Portland a while back. Something I've never disclosed publicly is I personally attended one of the meetings approximately 20 years ago where it led to what happened, and it's unmentionable even in a church parish hall as far as I'm concerned. So.
Okay, so safeguards. Whenever we give you a name for a priest, I'm a transition minister in the Episcopal Church. I was reminded by some friends that I was appointed to the board of transition ministry of the Episcopal Church. I just said yes to a committee, and then somebody called me and said, they just said you're on something at General Convention. Transition ministers, part of what we do is we check in with each other and bishops. So one of the things that's my job, if there's a candidate, is that I call their transition minister and ask what they've been up to. And actually the way I do it, and I don't do it the way everybody does it, but the way I do it is I actually ask intrusive questions about conduct and conflict in the intake interview. So if I actually haven't seen the person being formed because they're from here, I actually ask them the same questions I'm going to ask their transition minister. And they're things like, have you ever left a church in conflict? Have you ever committed misconduct? How do you understand loyalty to the Episcopal Church? And I record those responses, not because they're a litmus test, actually, but because what's more important than someone getting an answer right or wrong is how other people experience them. So I ask someone all those questions, and then I ask other people those same questions, and I compare the answers. And if the person who I'm talking to lacks self-awareness about their impact on others, like if they don't see that they were kind of a jerk and everyone else is pretty sure they were a jerk, then I ask them about that. Or I tell the interviewing team, you should ask them about that. Because sometimes actually, I don't want to take your choice away. I want to give you a choice, but I want you to have all the information that you need to make a good choice. So that's one bit, and that's just about conduct and misconduct. I will say it's honestly not here that I would worry about people being schismatic. I think it would actually be pretty hard to get y'all, based on this morning, to go ACNA tomorrow. Even if that was your politics, right? Even if you were more in a different place politically than where the Episcopal Church is. But that being said, I actually do work with people who have very different understandings about homosexuality, women's role in the church, who are from other places. And we work that out as long as it's cool and they understand that we're under orders to Episcopal bishops. And that they have to be loyal to that if we want to work together. But that being said, if they're willing to do that, you know, if you're from Africa and you're not really there yet on homosexuality, even though I'm queer, like you could work with me and we could feed hungry people and build your church up. And if you're willing to do that, and then you're Episcopalian to me, actually. So what we ask is that people, you know, you're only gonna get Episcopal priests, is I guess what I would say. We're not gonna give you, unless you're like, we would consider a Lutheran, or we wanna explore ecumenical options. And actually, if that was the case, and you were a little church, maybe that didn't have a building anymore, and you were worshiping in a Methodist church and a Lutheran church was up the street, I might actually hook you up. But not so that you would be less Episcopalian, but so that you would have a chance to be Christian in your town. Because otherwise you might not. So for us, the thing is that we want you to, you're Episcopalians, and I'm so glad you are. That's why I feel at home. I'm not going to give you some other denomination's priest. That's not going to help you be better Episcopalians and follow Jesus the way God has called us to follow Jesus here. I don't think. Autism. So in terms of clergy, that's a harder one. Like what I would say is so there was a question about how the church is responding to autism and people in the autism community. I have to tell you, my child is probably going to get diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder in a couple months. So we've been trying on that hypothesis for a little while now. It's hard to be in church if you're neurodivergent. And also, like every other gift that God gives us, and I think neurodivergence is a gift, we have to figure out the right place to put it for the working of God's mission. And so I too am thinking about the ways we can help people be members of the community that are authentic, that don't crush their spirits, but that also help us all grow. Because it is true, like, there's some stuff in Scripture about you can be right morally, but if you're not kind to other people, you're like a clanging cymbal. It doesn't help build up the body of God. So we need to figure out how we're bumping into each other always when we're doing intercultural work, and I think neurodivergence is one of those places. We need to be gracious. And a lot of us are working on it. And a lot of Episcopalians are neurodivergent. Big surprise. We're a very cerebral group. So it's not surprising we would have more neurons there than other people sometimes.
I understand that there are 12 or 13 churches in this diocese who are looking for someone. And this idea is very, very new to me. But it sounds like a winner because we're a unique group of people. And I don't think we can just put out an ad and have the right person come in. So this gives us a lot of options.
So there was a affirming comment about this path perhaps giving us more options, and that is my hope. That is why I'm here and hoping with you. Some members of the profile team are leaving so that they can think about what they have to do now that they've heard this bit. Yes, one more.
Is the membership in Clark County improving?
Is membership in Clark County improving? You mean of all of the churches? You know, that's hard for me to say. I haven't looked at the post-COVID numbers. I did worship at All Saints not too long ago within the last year, and it was pretty robust down there. I haven't been to Good Shepherd in a little bit, but I've heard good things from Jana and the clergy there, and Ron. So I would think I think you're doing well. I think a lot about this area actually, because you're different than some of our other places. You're a little more dense population-wise, but for the density you are, there's more people in Vancouver than there are in Aberdeen or out on the peninsula, for instance, right? So there's a lot of people here because you're essentially North Metroplex, Portland. Like I've been trying to tell everyone in Seattle, you know our churches in Vancouver, like we have 3 metroplexes now. It's not just the Seattle one. Y'all live in Portland, basically. Like you function towards Portland. I know you don't want to. But I mean, like, if you're gonna go to the symphony, you would go to Portland. Like when I lived in Auburn. Powell's, what's thing you have? Basketball? But so if you wanted to, is there anything people go to Portland for? Soccer, thank you. Thank you, okay. Because that's true. The Portland Thorns always yell obscene things whenever they come to Seattle. So if you needed to go see women's soccer, you would need to go to Portland, right?
Every store that you go to Portland for is gone,
So this is what I'll say. Portland has sprawled. So 20 years ago when I was a youngster, PBS NewsHour did a great story on how Portland, unlike Seattle, had done such a great job of preventing sprawl. And now that's all over. So what's happened is a lot of the population demographic growth you've seen in Vancouver is related to the growth and housing failures in Portland. And what it means is even if you don't like Portland, just like people in Bellevue don't like Seattle, or I'm from South King County and we would always split the bird at Everett. Like, even if you don't like that, that's still the town that your economy is centered around. Like the service jobs here are supporting the Portland economy. Your transportation infrastructure is related. Like we don't have to like it, but it's true. And that growth in Portland has meant we have a real opportunity here in the county. And what I like about the churches here are that they're different. And I mean that in like Episcopal churches are not all supposed to be the same. So I get the feel of like a historic Episcopal church when I come here. I get the feeling of more evangelical broad church when I go to Good Shepherd. And I get the feeling of, right now, they're actually a little kind of like artsy and thinky when I was at All Saints, Vancouver, which surprised me. But that was the vibe I got. Just different, and that's actually really good for us. It's really good for us Episcopalians if in a town there's different expressions that could meet those different needs, that people might have different ways to pray, different ways to serve. So to me, that's really positive, and the work you can keep doing is being the best St. Luke's you can be. It's like what they used to say with Starbucks. If you put 2 Starbucks on a corner, they'll both, it actually more than doubles the sales. It's because there's 2 different ones and people choose, and it actually attracts energy. Like you've attracted energy and Starbucks energy to that corner. So we're attracting great Episcopal energy here in the county. We just need to keep being our best authentic selves. So it's also true, I think we're well positioned in a place that is like more politically mixed. We have historically been a broad tent. And if we can retain that, that's going to be really good for this region, I think.
Are we doing a national search?
So I have to tell you that I have one name in mind that I can give, that I've communicated to the vestry, and it's not somebody who's currently working here. But that's all I really am going to say, because actually I can't say other stuff. It's actually super uncool for me to give any identifying information because that person works somewhere. And the place where they work might not know that they're looking. So we all need to be careful, because the priest that you want to welcome, if we like gossip, if we like speak out of turn and share information that we're not supposed to share with people we're not supposed to share it with, we could hurt that person and their family and their congregation. And that's why I will not give any more information than to say I got a name.
How long would this priest stay with us for a while, or how long would this priest stay with us?
The contract would be for 2 years, and so unless something really bad happened, you would be together for 2 years and then decide to stay or not.
So, you remember me from vestry, I'm sure.
I do, and I'm glad to see you.
This is on.
It is.
Okay. As you said, we're a historical parish. We've been here for a long time. We've had a lot of interactions with the bishop's office, many different bishops, some of them really good, some of them not so good. So there is, amongst some of us, a level of distrust.
Yep.
What can you say to assure us that we have control over this process, that, and I thought you did this well with the vestry, by the way, we have control over this process, and this is not just being dictated to us from the cathedral?
Yes. So, the first thing to remember is my goal is for you to have a free and informed choice. That the free part is no thumb on the scale. I'll give you the best information I have. I won't withhold any. I will tell you if something is something you should be worried about or not when you're looking at somebody. You all vote. What we'll do is give you a name. We'll give you a name pretty soon. The vestry is going to vote. If they say, no, this isn't the right one, I'll do my best to find another name until we find one, or until we're at the point where you've done a profile, now we're ready to call a rector anyway. One of those two things is going to happen. We're going to keep trying this until we get it. So the people who say yes to the priest are you, through your elected leaders. That's how the choice is made. What the bishop's office always does is give you people who are eligible to be your priest. And actually in every agreement that is signed with a priest and a congregation, the priest signs it, the warden signs it, to say, because they're the person who's legally the calling person, canonically the one who calls the priest on your behalf, and the bishop signs it. When the bishop signs it, it's a signature of acknowledgement. And we're actually going to change the language to make this even clearer than it's been in the past. That acknowledgement doesn't mean the bishop is calling the priest. It doesn't mean the bishop's office is on the hook for paying if you can't pay. That's one of the reasons why we're changing it. But it does mean the bishop saying, I'm vouching for I'm saying that this person is canonically qualified. That's actually the minimum our office does. We give you names and say, we don't think this one will hurt you. That's what we're acknowledging. There's no impediment. So my goal is for you to make the best choice, because it's not my choice. I want to give you everything you can and the best people I can give you as a choice, but it will be entirely up to you and the governing body you've elected to make the choice. And just like Scripture says, we want our yes to be a yes and our no to be a no. That's the most important thing. If you call this person, you better want them to work with you. If you don't want to call them to work with you, don't. And that's the choice that you'll make. And when you get to the end of the 2 years, and this is a real thing, it could be lackluster. You could be like, it was fine, but maybe not great. And that would be the thing you would talk about to decide whether you want to call. It will not be our office saying you have to call, and we will not say you have to get rid of them. It will be your choice. So our role in this is to give you the best information and the best choice, highlight the best possible options and choices that you have. But we can't make that choice for you. We will be your companion though. I'm gonna be here rooting for you. Our office is gonna be rooting for you. If there's bumps along the way, we will answer the questions. If you need help having tough conversations, we will bring people to help you have those tough conversations. But it will be your choice. It will be your choice. And I want you to make a really good one. And I can't make it for you because I don't have to live with the consequences. You do. That's a really good question. All right. Is there anything else? One thing I'll say is it might be about time to wrap up, but if people have more questions, I'm not going back to Bremerton before the 1. So I'll be here and you can ask me questions offline too. Is there anything else we need to ask here as a gathered group? Yes, Kathy.
Did you want to meet with the vestry at all, or is this good? Because a lot of them are here.
I think it's a question for, I will be here. Vestry, if I'm just going to be here, and leaders, Father Jesus or Kathy will tell me what to do. Because again, it's up to you. I'm just here to help. Anything else? Oh, yes.
I just wanted to thank you for being such a good communicator. It's really, really good. At least as far as I know, it was extremely clear. And it was upbeat and hopeful. Thank you so much.
I want to thank all of you for staying, for having great questions, and for listening to the information that she brought to us, because I think it's going to help all of us go through this process in a more unified manner, trusting the decisions that the vestry's making. So thank you very much.
Thank you for loving St. Luke's on Lucas. Thank you.